Chris Adams and Steven Arboleta of the RVA Returners back for the next episode in our community spotlight. Kind of get to know players, get to know like the decks they like to play and just what they've been up to. Just kind of give a quick background. This is episode 2 of our series. This kind of started a long time ago, back when Steven was still with the Fredericksburg Turks. We did an interview with JFB, which be on the lookout. We got another one coming up after his win in the Water Crystal Cup over the weekend. But just a way to get to kind of spotlight some of the well-known players in the community, and we couldn't think a better follow-up to Mr. Alejandro Ziegenhurt than Mr. Sam Tuell, member of the Tantalus Theater Troupe himself. Sam, say hi to everybody.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. You look very dapper. I know the hair looks good. The shirt definitely looks like you threw it on and just really got gussied up for us.
Absolutely. No, nothing more important than being good for my Chris.
Oh, you. Flattery will get you everywhere, sir.
So they say.
But so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about, like I said, man, we're going to let the other players who maybe haven't had a chance to interact with you, maybe had a chance to play you at events, or I know the Tantalus group, you guys do content. You guys did a lot of the Octagon Open, which was really, really huge. I'm sure you all had a lot of people watching that. We appreciate you guys doing that. I know you do a lot of you do a podcast here and there. You do like set reviews, pre-release stuff, that things like that. So really get into the competitive like nuts and bolts of this game, and you guys' opinions are very well respected, and I think you have really neat opinions on cards. But
hot takes for
hot
sure.
Takes, indeed. But with that being said, Sam, kind of give us some of your background. I know we were literally just talking before this started. I know you come from a Magic background. What kind of made you make the transition from Magic to Final Fantasy, or do you still kind of dabble in Magic as well?
Yeah, so I do still dabble a little bit here and there, but I started out in Magic. The first thing that got me into Magic was drafts, actually. Limited has always been like one of my favorite like heart and soul of games, because the idea of just showing up, just you get to enter into the event. Everybody's on an even playing field. Doesn't matter what you own before you step foot into that game. You're good to go. So I always loved that, and that really got me going into Magic, which eventually led into me playing eternal formats of Magic. So Legacy is my big staple. I played control decks in there. Usually Miracles, or
I knew you were a Miracles guy.
Of course. I want to go to turn 400, and I want to make the game last as long as possible. I want to grind out my opponent to victory. So like that's always my game plan in every kind of game. Before Magic, actually, I played Naruto when I was much younger. So did a bunch of those tournaments. Game was very fun. Moved into Magic. Now I'm into Final Fantasy. Main reason I got into Final Fantasy is like the IP. Long-term time fan, like just unbelievable love for all of the games. So kind of moving into it, and then playing the card game, I was like, I definitely will try out the starter decks because it's Final Fantasy. And then I kind of fell in love with the game mechanics. Like this game has so many options, so great. I'm sure everybody's talked that to death, so I won't be a dead horse there.
But we like to hear it. We love to hear it.
Well,
this
so
is the
like
greatest game ever.
In Magic, you're sitting there and you get those 5 land hands, and you're like, I can probably keep this as long as I don't draw some more lands off the top. And then you just land, and the only spells you play the entire game are the 2 that were in your opening hand, and then you had no other options, and that happens. That's a non-zero. That's like impossible to have in Final Fantasy. Like just a straight up impossibility. You have so many options, and your decision trees are so complex. It really entices me to play more of the game. That's why I prefer the older sets of Magic. Usually they have a lot more complex interactions, as opposed to like the standard interaction in Magic is pretty cut and dry. But yeah, so like moving on from that, like for Final Fantasy, I first got into it, and then so we actually got starter decks. My buddy at work, we played at lunch. I was like, this game's insane. That day, I came back from lunch. I looked up.
We got starter decks at work.
Oh yeah, we played. He brought it to lunch, so I played the starter deck at lunch.
Nice.
That's sick.
Yeah. So get back to work. I actually checked on my computer at work, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look into this competitive scene. I was like, oh, there was a Worlds last year. That's really cool. I wonder how to get to Worlds this year. Turns out the Kansas City Crystal Cup. It was about 3 weeks away, 4 weeks away at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much committed like on the spot. I was like, I don't know what I have to do, but I'm going to this. So from there on, I just, I started looking up some decks. I was like, oh, the Shantoto card, it's insane. It's Wrath of God on a land. That seems really good. So kind of just moved on from there, just played a mono Earth. That was good stuff.
So one of the funny thing here is about you saying that your first major with Final Fantasy was the Kansas City Crystal Cup. And
yeah, it was my first tournament,
episode,
period.
Well, yeah, last tournament. And last episode, Alex's was that as well. It's kind of funny that the Kansas Crystal Cup was like both of you guys' first major when it came to, first event rather, when it came to Final Fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such an overwhelmingly positive experience. Clearly it kept me going into this game. Met so many cool people there, especially Hired Nance, hanging out with him. Super fun, great guy. Met the beautiful man I can see on the other side of the screen right here, Steven, there as well. It was a great experience for me and everybody I dragged along to that. I brought my fiance and 2 friends, and so
it's
we
funny,
all had
actually,
a great time.
That's kind of where you and I met, because I played her in the Swiss rounds. It was me and her, and she was on Wind Lightning, and I was on just Mono Lightning, and then kind of had some interactions with that. So yeah, that's kind of where we came back to, and then we kind of met up after the fact at the local qualifier that you got your invite in for Nats that same year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So kind of pick it up to where, I wanted to bring you in because this whole series is pretty much about a lot of the decks that have topped recently, and you were like the number 1 seed at the most recent Crystal Cup that we had. Water one for us is right around the corner. So I kind of want to give people insight of why you chose this, and maybe this can influence somebody to go this route if this is their playstyle, or maybe go the opposite, or maybe test for this. There's plenty of ways to go about it. Talk to me. What was going into your thought process before the Fire Crystal Cup, and how did you get on this? What else did you test?
So I'm really glad you guys did ask me for this, because I was meaning to do a write up about it, a
2 for 1
kind of quick spread and everything. So super appreciate you guys asking. Ice Earth has been something that I had been toying with for a while. Going into Nationals, I was looking at Wind Earth, and then kind of moved into Ice Earth, and I kind of fell in love with it then. Definitely think the deck is very strong. I'd been kind of practicing it through the Cauldron Cup and then to the Reunion event. In both events, actually, so Cauldron Cup, I only had 1 loss in Swiss, which was to Colin Rupert, and then I had 1 loss in top 8, which was to Colin Rupert. That man has my number. And then at Reunion, I started out, I was one of 2 or 3 5-0s in the room, and then I proceeded to I had 3 win-in ends, and lost them all. I definitely think there were some play changes I could have had, but I felt very confident with the deck. I think Ice Earth is very powerful. Both those elements fit very much into my play style, and I think that's some of the biggest reasoning. Being able to kind of control the board, being able to control their hand, being able to control the other forwards out, and also still being able to play very powerful forwards. So you're not worried about trying to aggressively attack with the deck. So my Ice Earth deck that I took for the Fire Crystal Cup was actually really much in a coin flip scenario. So up till the actual event, I was looking at a Cat 6 version of the deck. It didn't have any of the Garlands in it, and I was pretty confident with this list. It was 100% revolving around all of the Category 6 stuff. definitely abusing the fact of the new Setzer.
Is the
Um,
newt set like what was your so you would play in the newt sets or the backup sets are over the forward sets so that tutors everything.
Yeah, so this version really kind of set up backups very, very quickly. It had a very high number of 4/2 CP backups. So my goal was, turn one, double backup, turn two, another backup, maybe a fourth backup. So
Okay.
we're
You're not putting
trying to
your own
fill
hype for
out
everything.
exactly. So it was a little less flan centric. That being said, it still had 5 flans in it. The flans obviously in ice earth, that's just a basic common strong synergy, being able to use the ice flan to effectively draw you a card for 1 ICP per turn. That's just very powerful. But I was taking advantage of Lock, Celeste, Terra, and the Terra Dataluma interaction in that version. But one of the things that happened is I actually played in the not the U.S. Octagon Open, or actually no, it was the U.S. Octagon Open, and so I had won my first few matches. I played against Hunter, and Hunter was playing his version, which actually has had Garland 9, and so we had our game. Things didn't kind of work out for me. I don't think I played super optimally, but I definitely had a few turns where I could have kind of turned it around with some right draws, but needless to say, that didn't happen. So it was a pretty overwhelming victory for Hunter towards the end. But we kind of sat there and talked about it. Hunter is a known, big
Savage.
big fanatic of Ice Earth, especially. Like, he just thinks they're the best colors for sure. And I'm kind of in a similar philosophy. I think both the colors are exceptionally powerful. So, we talked over the deck, and the biggest takeaway from the whole talk was Garland's insane. You need to be playing him. You need to be playing 3. So moving from there, I tested Garland a little bit, probably not as much as I should, but Garland's such a good card. So honestly, then I kind of settled on a 6 list with Garland, but I felt like I never had enough room for everything. So the night before the event, actually at 3 a.m., I go, I don't like this. So I take apart all the 6 cards. I'm in bed, actually. I'm in bed with FF decks up, and I pull up FF decks, and I just click 3 of all the cards that I think are exceptionally important. And then from there, I just fill in the gaps. And when I actually finished making the whole deck, I had no summons. So I had no interactivity other than on my turn. So that was the only problem I found with my original list that I made at 3 a.m. And I was like, oh, this has all the cards I want. And clearly, I just wasn't crazy about summons. So my sum total list that I ended up running at the Fire Crystal Cup did run 2 summons. I ended up cutting a Renoa, and I believe I cut a Genesis, was the last cut. Oh no, I cut one more backup. Yeah, so I went from 18 backups to 17. Yeah.
I think you're at a pretty healthy number. Looking at the list, I see you have the rare Jill. You got 2 Duke Largs instead of 3. 3. You're at 3 Edwards, 2 Mach 13s, 1 Devout, and that's kind of it. And the Sid Waff. That's kind of it for your ice package. And then you have 1 Jesse, 1 Miner, 1 Minfilia, and 2 Shantoto. Why not go double Miner, 1 Shantoto? Kind of what was the difference between there?
Honestly, I was on that list for a while. One of the biggest reasons is you need the ICP. Shantoto is technically the ICP. Also, you need to have the Shantoa. You can't always just rely on being able to pick it up with Miner. If your Shantoa gets hit on damage, you're just kind of dead on board. So especially, looking into top cut matches, because my initial goal was obviously we're going to clear through Swiss, and we need to look at top cut. So that honestly for Swiss, I would have not played any Glassies if deck lists weren't shown for top cut. I would not have had a single summon in my list.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing with Shantoto. I probably will run 1 Shantoto. had there been no deck list in top cut. But the fact that that is knowledge to your opponent in that top cut, like that's just a knowledge gap that you can't overlook.
Of course.
Insight on this deck list, Jill Nabat was completely irrelevant except for one matchup against Mono Wind. Okay. It was kind of put in there just to preemptively beat Fusoya. This deck does have some pretty serious issues against Fusoya. Garland 9, notably, is insane, which was actually the title of the deck. Hunter Nance says Garland is insane, but Garland is not insane if he just gets Fusoya'd, even if you have a Duke Larg out. The Jill was kind of a hedge against that. Hindsight, I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just gone with the 2 Harleys instead. And that would have just made the list a little bit more consistent, a little bit more powerful.
How was the field? I mean, what was your what do you?
Yeah. So round 1, solely on this list, round 1 I played against Colin Coughlin. You guys know him, great guy. Played against Mono Water. So we kind of did our standard early game setup. I pushed out with, I believe, either a Sarah or a Garland and kind of started getting a little aggressive. One of the things that I was able to do is I did have an Edward. I was able to kind of leave him up kind of as a threat. Moving towards the mid game, he actually tried to Leviathan to remove the Garland, which was just quickly suffocating his CP. And I had the Edward, so that's a pretty rough exchange, always being able to, lose a card and all the mana you paid for it just for the tap and the discard. So really from there on, he didn't have an answer for the Garland. And so it actually pushed me to a really quick 7-0 victory against him. So that was that first round. My second round, oof, God, it's been a while, so I'm actually kind of
one thing that I kind of want to get to is like, based off of each round, I mean, anything that you wanted to change, maybe like during this matchup, I really like the list and I built it this way, but maybe I would have preferred it if I would have seen this instead. What would have made that matchup more favorable? Now you clearly you got the 7-0 on Colin, so maybe you kind of played it right there. But anything as you're going along with your matchups, any notable that you say, I wish I really saw this instead of.
Honestly, the list felt insanely tight. I won all of my Swiss matches except for against Curtis Kang. He was on Death Machine. I do think that A is a really bad matchup for me, but also now with the A, the errata, and B, unfortunately at the time we were actually playing the card incorrectly, which is just definitely, like something to always make sure that you're kind of checking with the judge on, because like we were playing it completely wrong. Curtis is a great guy and we thought we were playing it correct, but it being able to leave up your Gigas at the end of the turn and not having to lose him is a pretty rough thing to fight against, especially with this deck. Like I have very little instant speed interaction. Yeah. So I had pretty much no answers to that all game. So I actually just conceded that game when I was on like damage 3 or something. I was like, no, I literally can never beat this. So I was like, oh man, this is death in top cut. But moving into the top cut, like I think honestly, like there's not too terribly much I would change on this list. I don't know if the chaos is actually necessary, adding in the extra dark card. Now, notably, it is really nice to have the tutor from the Camelot. And obviously, Camelot's really good, but honestly, I didn't play him too terribly much in a lot of my matchups. But most of my matchups were 7-0s or really close to it. If you look back at my damage from the Tampa Crystal Cup, I took very little damage, and that's as strange as it sounds, that's kind of what I like to do in a lot of these Ice Earth decks, which is a little counterintuitive to I know how a lot of people play, but really kind of just leveraging an early Sephiroth and kind of like, okay, you can have your backups, and then I'm going to try to win the game. Mm-hmm. You're going to play one forward, we're going to get it out of the way, and we're going to go in.
So shortly after you shared this list with me, I asked you, like, hey, I was in the middle of my Octagon Open match prepping to go up against Alex, right?
Yeah.
And you told me, hey, give this a shot. And I was between this and Mono Water. And I didn't understand how good Garland was until you play Garland early, mid, or late
He's
game.
crippling.
Like
He's
playing
crippling
Garland,
her.
like having Garland on the board after a Sephiroth, right? It it,
Oh, feels so good.
it
Feels
just
so
hurts
good.
so much. Like instead of that Sephiroth taking away 2 cards, it feels like he takes away 4. Like having Garland
Absolutely.
there, it just amplifies everything about the card. And I've been playing this list nonstop on Octagon after that. So thank you
Yeah.
for the heads up. And that's kind of why I
Oh,
wanted to do this all
absolutely.
together. Um, you did
Yeah,
go.
and I do think one of the best ways to set it up is to set up with the Sephiroth into the Garland. Obviously, you've denied them their resources at hand; they're kind of stuck top decking, and then you have to make them play that very awkwardly with the Garland. One thing I kind of did do as some misplays against like Colin Rupert in the finals is. I kind of prioritized some of my backups on those early turns, which obviously you should do, but I actually he very well played around Sephiroth, and I was trying to hold on to the Sephiroth, and I pitched some other cards that I didn't need to, and then he played around Sephiroth for a while, and then I pitched the Sephiroth, and then he built back up his hand. So he's obviously a master. Colin's a actual whiz at mono water. The only mono water that really kind of gave me trouble. I also played against Alan Shu to a quick 7-0 as well. But like the
Quick
Sephiroth
7-0.
against the Sephiroth against those mono wire decks
hurts.
can just be absolutely
it's over.
backbreaking
Yeah.
because like 1-2 discards means almost nothing to mono water, but being able to Sephiroth Sephiroth or just Sephiroth Renoa and actually clear out their hand, making them top deck is the best way to fight against those decks. That way you're not just they have so many things they can do if they have options.
And like, let's face it, if you top deck, if you're both on top deck mode, Ice just top decks everything better.
Yeah, they always have.
They're just the better top deck.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, another thing I probably would change hindsight is probably looking into that third Duke Lard, probably moving, one more 2 CP backup. So going back to that 18 backups, but like honestly, summons have felt very relatively superfluous in this deck. The only time you're ever playing Glassy is to win the game or to make some kind of disaster scenario not happen. And too often, that's just not relevant in a lot of matchups. And like an extra Genesis usually accomplishes a similar thing as Glassy.
I feel like it's just another way to instant speed your Sephiroth combat triggers, like the Dolphin.
That's true.
You can pick off the additional one. So it's kind of it's. I mean,
well, and maybe you covered this while I disappear for a while to the Shadow Realm. But did you ever miss any like the Earth summons, like either version of Hecaton Chair or anything like that?
Honestly, no. The backup destruction is one that's near and dear to my heart because it really plays to that control player who I am. But for this deck, being able to you unfortunately can't deny them every resource ever in the game. So you kind of have to pick and choose your battles, and I think denying them the hand is usually more important. If you can hit those key backups with the Hekkas, that's really important, but too often does that card just get discarded and you have no recursion for it. You can't devout minor Minfilia, any of that stuff. So you're just kind of left with, I drew a Hecaton, it's turn 1, they don't have any really crazy backups they're going to play yet. It's just pitched, or you kind of draw it into the mid game and you're like, I really want to push. So as I mentioned, like I really tried to gear this deck to being a little bit more aggressive. I definitely think the 3CP Sarah, is one of the most powerful cards on the deck and very easily overlooked. Just being able to play it early, especially in a Veritas heavy meta, effectively playing a 1 CP forward that with Duke Lard turns into a 7K that also can enable your Sephiroth triggers, enable your Sid Alstein triggers. And once again, can't emphasize this enough with Veritas in the meta. Like you need to have something other than your Sid Alstein, your Orphan, your Sephiroth to sack to his ability. So that Sarah really, and same with Garland. Like, you don't want to sack Garland either. So you gotta have something that's very disposable. So she was one of the most, overpowered cards I felt in the deck. Is as small as she seems, she is exceptionally significant.
So
she just kind of comes in, does her job, and you want her off the board really at that point.
Because you want to play another one. And so I see, like, looking at the list, things that you have favorable to kind of eat the Veritas as far as your forwards go, because you never really want to lose the backups. I feel like they're too valuable. You can kind of chump any of your flans, but you don't want to do that. And then you have your Sarah and your Sid Rain, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Sarah always gets you the guaranteed discard.
Yeah, and notably, Sid Rains is 90% of the time only relevant with a Renoa in the same hand. So unless you have both of them, usually Sid Rains was CP. Obviously, he's a crazy blowout in the correct scenarios, but if he's just coming out by himself, and unless he's answering just like a Layla or Viking, he's not too crazy.
Okay.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. Now, Steven, you're doing a great job, man.
Well, the only thing I want to go into is before I jump right into. Well, we kind of did this whole deck. We kind of did everything we wanted to with this, but I mean, were you looking at anything else other than Ice Earth? Like,
yes. So,
what were the
actually, I had one extra thing I did have is I actually had 2 decks fully ready to go, 100%. Right before the event, and I actually asked a nearby person for a dice to roll to decide which deck I was going to play. Dead serious.
That's how you do it.
Dead serious. So one thing I saw, I believe the Wednesday beforehand or whatever, it was JFB's Warrior of Darkness, like 5-colored deck that was completely crazy off the wall.
Yeah. Which, by the way, got better with the Alba.
The Alba change.
Yeah.
The Alba
absolutely.
You're right.
Yeah, I saw him actually play in one event, and in the finals, he actually knocks it to activate to kill his own Alba, to kill his own Diana, so he can play Alba. So there are only 2 Warriors of Darkness, so he can tap the 2 forwards. And I was like, that is a sick play. That's the kind of stuff that.
That's big brain stuff.
Bro,
those are the things that get you the wins for sure. Like, obviously a great player and really, really love that deck. I made like 2-3 changes to it. I added a few more backups because I don't feel comfortable with his very low backups. And
I 15 this weekend.
Nuts.
Yeah, I went up to 17, and I added a Dark Fina. I cut a little bit from some of the early forwards. Honestly, I know he's talked about it nonstop, but Aerith did not perform for me, so I kind of trimmed. I think I went to 1 or 0 on her. But I had that deck fully ready. I played it the night before at the locals. I loved it. The deck's really fun. I was playing on kitchen table nonstop, and pretty much you just sit there and you just play with yourself for like 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you just pass turn and you have 8 cards in hand. You just make people spawn out of nowhere, and you always have too many cards, which is really, really fun and a lot of work. But ultimately, not that I decided by my own will, it literally came down to the dice roll. I was very comfortable playing both decks.
That's bold. No, I can't do that. I don't know. Bold.
Now, with that being said, what's next on the radar? What's next for Sam Tuell? What's the next event for you?
So Toronto is like, I would say last week it was a 40%. Right now I'd say it's a 60%. After that, I did buy my Kansas City ticket today. I know that those just went up, so I already bought that. Buying flight tonight, so I will 110% be there. But won't make it out to the Water Crystal Cup. It's just the flight was a little too much, but Toronto is definitely on the radar. I know I'm a little late in the game, but hopefully might be able to squeak in there.
Can we expect you playing that Ice Earth again, or are you changing it up on us?
I mean, clearly my decisions are very absolute because I decide by dice rolls. But I could definitely see myself playing Ice Earth again. Like, the deck's just great. Obviously, the other tier 1 decks I do think are very viable: mono, water, wind, earth. I feel comfortable with all those decks. So the more important thing for me, I know it's not relevant for Toronto, but actually is the limited in the Kansas City Crystal Cup. Like, I am so excited for that. We've gotten quite a few Opus 8 drafts already going at our locals, and they've been outstanding. So like the actual archetypes that you're able to build, as well as like the cohesiveness of the set, is just, it's on another level from pretty much everything we've seen in the past. So that's even more so where I'm excited to show off like some kind of deck building skills and stuff.
Yeah, it's a great limited set, and we've seen just how it does make the better players in the room feel like the better players in the room.
Yeah, I know JFB is like a big proponent of that stuff, and he's like, the cream of the crop will always rise to the top.
Macho Man said it best himself.
My God.
Yeah.
I mean, he did go 4-0 in draft.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I looked at his list as well for draft and how he talked over his picks. I know he kind of flippantly talked about them, but starting with Shiva, like I would agree that she's probably the strongest summon in the set. So like being able to first pick Shiva, second pick Shiva, I think he said third pick Shiva, and I was like, yeah, I mean the deck's probably good from there.
I'd be scared to not get any ice after that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I draft with backups first before I start picking everything else. Maybe I'm just bad.
Speaking
it really
from
depends on the pack.
Yeah, it absolutely does depend. I would say most of the backups in this set are pretty interchangeable for pretty much all the colors. There are a few notable, like really big exceptions. I think what Edgar is like probably a huge high pick backup, and Setzer's a pretty medium to high pick backup. But other than that, there aren't too many backups that are very synergistic, and unless they have synergy, I would really focus on getting your bombs, your removal way before anything else. Another thing that I think a lot of people kind of undervalue is just the synergy cards, though. You don't always have to pick the bomb. The synergy card, like the card that works with the cards you already have, I've found have been more effective. Like Iraha may not always be the best just like in a vacuum, but Iraha in conjunction with, Edgar Sabin kind of gets pretty insane. So being able to pick stuff like that, I think will really show who's the better drafters in the room.
Yep. Yeah, there are a lot. I mean, obviously, it's a very limited set, a set with limited in mind. There are some pretty clear archetypes that you can draft. But it does come down to, it goes back to drafting. It goes back to knowing, what's coming from the right, what'll be coming from the left in the next pack. So it's really all about signals. So.
Yeah, the signals are definitely huge because, just like JFB mentioned, he got past a Shiva and then he got past a Shiva. So, that's a clear sign that ice is gonna keep coming from that side. So as long as you got one side open for a color like that, like you should feel pretty good moving into it. And then from there, especially what I like to do is pick the one color and then kind of branch off based on what else is open.
Absolutely.
Look for those big signals. I think he mentioned he had a Death Gaze get past pretty late. I feel like that's a pretty big signal.
All right.
Yeah, like okay, nobody's playing wind. We'll move in here.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to hear, man. I know you've got, you're a player we always, we always look forward to seeing at these events. It's when we see your name on the registration list, we can kind of assume that you're going to be in top cut, pretty close to the higher seeds. And it's a tail of the tape at that point. You've definitely proven yourself being a consistent player. So you got Toronto's a maybe, more than a maybe, I'd say. You've got Kansas City, you're locked in. What about Richmond? Where do you stand with Richmond?
Oh yeah. I'll be there for RVA. As a drive, I'm 100% in for that. And then I honestly, it depends on what area you're in, but if you're in the southeast, you may just see me drop into your local LQs too. So as long as I'm not busy that weekend, I'll be driving, sub 8 hours for just about any LQ.
Well, speaking of which, don't you have an LQ coming up this weekend in your local area?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually in the kind of Buford. It's northeast of Atlanta. It's at Galactic Quest. You can find the information on it on Facebook. But definitely come out if you are available. You think that drives anything close to reasonable for you. We'd all love to see you there. I'm not 100% sure what entry is, but obviously Nat's invite on the line. Come out, battle us. We'll see who wins.
That really sweet Decidia trophy as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, even if I do win an LQ, I've already promised all my buddies I'm still going to every other LQ just so I can try to win more of those trophies if I do get one. I know Hunter brags that he got 2 last year, and this hopefully I could get 2, and then I could rub it in his face.
Absolutely. Well, I'm kind of upset that I missed like the meat of this episode. I'm actually have to go back and watch it for the first time. But Steven clearly did a great job. Any shout outs you want to give? Any parting thoughts before we let you go tonight, man?
I mean, honestly, like this whole community, like there are just so many people that I have to thank for like all the time that I've spent at these events, and everybody just makes it so worthwhile. You, Steven, Greg Cole, like Sam Prime, like everybody is just always friendly. Everybody is always welcoming. And God, I literally just love this community, and I love this game, and I'm just so happy to play it.
Well, you heard it here first. Guys, Steven, wonderful job. I'm going to start letting you just take the lead on all these. I'm just going to sit back and like just drink beer while you talk. But no, Sam, it was actually a pleasure having you on tonight. Again, I'm sad I missed like the meat of it because my Discord started acting a fool. I think Alex put his juju on me from week 1 because he was having like the same issues. He had to like restart like 3 times during the interview. So. But, we definitely appreciate having you. And, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see how this actually turns out. I want y'all to be talking, and then I pop in and just yell Christ. And then
we can Adam, edit
that sounds perfect.
Yell Christ right now.
Yeah, those were your, like, final words as you got, like, Thanos snapped out of here.
Is that what you're going to do? Christ!
Adam, edit that in here. Edit this in here. Like, figure it out. Like that little, put it in there.
Oh, we'll figure it out. We're getting pretty good at this video stuff. But with that being said, Sam, thanks, Steven. Great job hosting today, and we can't wait to see you guys for the next episode. Thanks again.
Bye.